triumph.
I think that it indicates a return by Hollywood to the kind of courage that led to great epics like Lawrence of Arabia and the Star Wars trilogy. A really out there kind of large-scale, ambitious undertaking.
From New Line Cinema here.
I want to ask Mark where the world premiere of Return of the King is going to be.
Wellington, New Zealand!
Just as the riders of the Rohirrim rode into glory in battle, the Lord of the Rings rode into glory in the movie theaters. All three movies were gargantuan hits. Absolutely tip-top. And the one that they claim is the most epic of all is the final chapter, The Return of the King. This is one of those final chapters in a film trilogy that actually works. There's a truism in Hollywood, as well as that these films were unfilmable, is that the third chapter in a trilogy is usually not so good. But in this case, oh boy, this delivered the goods. It had 2 movies worth of build-up, and it really delivered. This is, I would argue, the most emotional of the bunch, because the highs and the lows that Peter Jackson is really going for with his characters and with the sheer scope of the cinematography, the music, and the effects is simply into the stratosphere and further than that. This is really that case where I think if I was an audience member in 2003 and if I was old enough to see these films, I probably would have been absolutely leaping out of my seat, couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next. And this really is the most crowd-pleasing, affirming of the whole bunch. And you know, the Return of the King, from what I've been able to research, actually has elements shifted into it from The Two Towers. And this was the whole running process of filming and adapting the trilogy, was characters, dialogue, and even whole sequences had to be shifted around, sometimes to different films from the books. And in this case, they took a lot of the stuff from Two Towers that didn't chronologically fit the build-up to Helm's Deep and was put into the first half of this movie, such as the very icky battle with Shelob and several other sequences that didn't quite fit into the Two Towers, and yet, I gotta say, they feel the most part of this story. They really do feel like they belong here. And that's just, again, wonderful structure to the screenplays. The 3 writers really did their homework, and I think they all knew in the back of their minds that this one really had to be the best. This one had to give that knockout punch, and again, it really does. Now, with that being said, as brilliant as some of the shifting around of the screenplays are, this is the film that I feel suffers wouldn't be the right word. I would say the more noticeable additions to the whole screenplay, such as Sam and Frodo breaking up essentially because of Gollum's misdeeds, as well as how Arwen fits into the motivation of Aragorn and how it kind of inspires Elrond to put the broken blade back together. It's a little shaky, but the way they're both executed it's not too much of a big deal, really. Like I said, it's noticed, but it doesn't detract from anything. If anything, the Arwen tied to the fate of the ring, I feel like is a holdover, perhaps, from her deleted scenes in The Two Towers, in which she was supposed to feature very heavily at the Battle of Helm's Deep. But here, I like the idea that Aragorn has all the motivation he needs, but he just needs that that little sprinkle on top, that little cherry on top of everything he has to put up with. And of course, it does lead to Viggo Mortensen's most heroic performance of the bunch. He's been fantastic throughout these films, but I feel like this one, he's finally going to ascend the throne of Gondor, and he has to see past himself, and he has to see past Isildur's bloodline and his own inner demons resulting from that. And I think that in that final speech which he delivers to the men outside the Black Gate is just as epic as William Wallace's speech. In fact, Bernard Hill's speech as Theoden for the Riders of Rohan about to charge into the Orc army to save Minas Tirith. Oh man, what a scene. And Bernard Hill's presence. I talked a little bit about him in The Two Towers, but I really wanted to talk about him here because Bernard Hill is one of those actors who is such a solid, steady presence. And as we saw as Captain E.J. Smith, he's able to project a man who's lost and has a difficulty making choices. But here, he knows what he must do. And it leads to that amazing bit right after the lighting of the beacons, which I'm going to talk about, by the way, where we're on pins and needles waiting for his response. And the response?
And Rohan will answer. Muster the Rohirrim.
Absolutely brilliant. And you know, all the character arcs in this story are really well developed and they're well concluded. I love the growth of Pippin from being the kind of happy, dumb idiot from the Shire into a brave servant of Gondor and participating in the battle right beside Gandalf. And I love that little dynamic he and Gandalf have had throughout the series, especially considering the Fellowship of the Ring. Pippin is partly responsible for his fall during the battle with the Balrog. And I love that he and Gandalf are paired together, and Gandalf finds him very annoying, but he bonds with Pippin and he fights alongside Pippin and reassures him about the Grey Havens on the opposite side, which is a beautiful scene, sparkling dialogue, and great acting between the two. I've loved that dynamic throughout the whole of the trilogy, even though it wasn't too much in The Two Towers. It got put back into here, and it really was something. And I love Dominic Monaghan, as we saw in The Two Towers. His impulsiveness grows into the desire to fight and to fight alongside for his friends and what he believes in. And I love that Theoden actually does encourage him just a little bit. But, of course, he has to sneak into battle with Eowyn. And Eowyn is so great in this movie. Miranda Otto really hit it out of the park in that she finds the courage to go into battle, and she winds up saving Theoden and destroying the Witch King of Angmar. And it was such a wonderful twist in the book that Tolkien included such a thing. That was pretty radical for the time, to include a woman going into battle like this and killing a character as she does. And, you know, that's just one of those things that makes these movies special. And again, I think a lot of that good writing comes from Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens in making the moment believable, and not a grandstanding moment, but one that fits into the world and is just, I find empowering.
I am no man.
This is why I had a crush on Eowyn, guys. More so than Arwen. I had a crush on Eowyn, believe it.
I will kill you if you touch him.
Do not come between the Nazgul and his prey.
Speaking of the battle scenes, this movie definitely does have the best battle scenes of the bunch. They're the best laid out, and they really are a wonder to behold. From an effects standpoint, the CGI still looks really good. Like I said in a previous video, there's an occasional hiccup, but as I am right now. But the cinematography goes for really brilliant wide vistas that really gives the opportunity to fill the screen with such great information and such great coordinated chaos that you really feel like you're into this battle. I think a little more so than Helm's Deep, but I feel like that was a choice on Peter's part to really kind of build up the final battle for the Return of the King. And I think here, again, that scene of the Rohirrim coming over the hill and with the dawn at their backs and Bernard Hill as Theoden just going for it acting-wise, just going for that Shakespearean oomph that scene really requires. And it was actually an ad-lib by Hill himself to take his sword and hit the spears as the horse ran along. And I think that just shows how much thought all these actors put into these small moments, and that even the spirit of it, not necessarily the action, but the spirit, also comes from the text in The Return of the King by Tolkien. In fact, there's a wonderful narration of this scene that if you find it on YouTube, it's masterful. It's so well done and just as exciting as the movie is, if not a little more, because of just the passion in the narrator's voice. But of course, I'm not gonna put this battle below that. And you know, I love that there's still a sense of danger throughout all these battles. I think that shot of Denethor looking over the precipice and seeing this incredible orc army at Minas Tirith's doorstep, and just that shot of how much he's failed as a steward and how screwed Minas Tirith is under his leadership, it's brilliantly composed. And of course, it leads to a belly laugh when Gandalf decides to deal with Denethor and his BS. God, I love Ian McKellen in that moment. It's so good. It's, you know, speaking of, you know, going from big moments like that, there's so many great small moments in this movie that I can't get over. You know, as a amateur filmmaker myself and a budding director, I eat these scenes up. I think one of my favorite scenes in the whole of The Lord of the Rings is when the four hobbits return to the Shire and they go to the pub and everybody's going about their lives, showing off the big pumpkins that they have. Rosie Cotton is serving the beers and giving the smile. You see the four hobbits sitting in silence. They're not really sad, but it's a bittersweet moment. And I love that it's just not a word is spoken. Not one. There's just this understanding between them that they've been through something incredible. And they all just have a little toast. They're not dancing on the tables. They're not singing the songs. They just have a quiet little toast for themselves. It's so great. And it just shows how great a director Peter is. You know, he's not just all about special effects and big gargantuan sequences. He's very good at finding small details to put into his films. And that's one of them. And again, carrying on from The Two Towers, I think that was a subtle little way of Tolkien discussing what it was like to come home from battle, what it was like to come home, to be a veteran to England, and for everybody else to kind of carry about on their lives, keep calm and carry on, as they say, and them just kind of being by themselves and understanding the magnitude of what they've just gone through. That's just... It's scenes like that, I think, are why this chapter won Best Picture. Fellowship of the Ring, I think, came the closest to Best Picture. Two Towers was in a very strange year, as we discussed in our regular podcast episode talking about Gangs of New York. It was a very strange year at the Oscars. Weinstein kind of dominated everything, but that's a rabbit hole that I don't really want to go down right now. But it's moments like that, or it's moments of Aragorn and Arwen reuniting, and that magnificent moment of, well, you got to see for yourselves, obviously.
My friends.
You bow to no one.
Just fantastic. And I love that the hobbits get the respect that they deserve, because they've kind of been the joke of the other characters because of their size. But I love that the Fellowship always sticks up for them, and especially that moment Aragorn shows how truly humble he is in recognizing the part that the hobbits had to play. I can't get over it. It was, when I first saw it, I had tears running down my face, and my dad noticed, and he said, "You really liked that, didn't you?" And I said, "I really did. I really did." And it was, that was nice. But I think the standout character of this movie, in terms of performance and just what he has to do to fulfill his story purpose and show what's at the end of the line, like remind Frodo what's at stake, is Sean Astin as Sam in this movie is a triumph. He really is that true stalwart friend, and he keeps Frodo going. He's very brave on his own, and even the scene when he realizes that Gollum lied to Frodo and cast them aside, he immediately goes back and defeats Shelob, which, again, a very icky sequence, because Shelob is such a monstrous design and character, which apparently came from Peter Jackson being arachnophobic, which that must have been fun for him to exercise the demons onto us. You know, directors can have fun that way. They can do anything they want just like that. And so Sean, especially that wonderful scene where they're in Mordor, they're climbing up Mount Doom, and they just can't do it. They're clawing at the volcanic ash. They're trying, but it's so smoky and it's so oppressive. And he really shows how truly dedicated he is to Frodo and how inspirational he is as a character in just this little scene.
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. Come on!
Very manly tears are shed at that scene. It just proved to me that Sean Astin deserved the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars that year. Out of the official nominees, I think Tim Robbins was the best choice. He was brilliant in Mystic River. But if I had my way, I would have nominated Sean and have him win, just as I would have nominated Andy Serkis for Best Supporting Actor in The Two Towers. You know, I'm coming around back to the Oscars. I feel that the Academy voters felt the same thing regular audience members felt, which was we got the epic conclusion. It satisfied almost everything we wanted from the previous two films. And I think they recognized that, yes, these are truly great films, and that they should finally give the films the recognition it deserves. They already had, awarding it several technical categories for Fellowship of the Ring and for The Two Towers. But The Return of the King is very special because out of 11 nominations, it won 11 Oscars. That's a perfect clean sweep, as Steven Spielberg said, opening the envelope for Best Picture.
It's a clean sweep. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, Barry M. Osborne, Peter Jackson, and Fran Walsh producers.
And again, from the other videos, I wish that they won adapted screenplay all 3 years, you know, because the amount of work that had to go in should have earned them Oscars and adapted screenplay for 3 consecutive years. That's just facts. And I love that several departments that finally got recognition. How did they miss out on art direction for the first 2 years? How is that possible? These were such beautifully designed films. And also, I gotta love that Alan Lee was part of the team that won the Academy Award for Best Art Direction. He worked as a set decorator with Dan Henna. It's just a testament to how dedicated he was to Tolkien, not only as an artist, but as a member of Peter's team. And Best Costume Design got it. The sound categories. Best Song for Into the West, which is a fabulous, fantastic, beautiful song that always moves me when I hear it. And I love that Fran Walsh convinced Howard Shore and singer Annie Lennox that she could take text from The Return of the King describing the Grey Havens and turn it into a song to just cap off the trilogy over the end credits, which also had art by Alan Lee, by the way. Just wonderful. And Howard Shore, I get to talk about the moments that really get me going, hairs on the back of my neck, blood pumping. I just want to pump my fist in the air, stand up and cheer. Is his music in this is just unbelievable. I mean, the lighting of the beacons is an exhilaratingly photographed sequence using the effects to light the beacons, but you get those brilliant helicopter shots of the guys lighting the beacons, and one is just kind of waving desperately back and forth, and you're almost like, please see us, please light the beacon, and it does. And the music swells to these incredible highs. It takes my breath away every time I watch it. It's what a sequence. Man. I just love talking about Howard Shore's music for this. And he got some brilliant music when the riders of Rohirrim are about to charge into battle. Again, we get that huge swell as the sun comes up and the swords and the spears are raised in the air as they chanting death. Howard Shore rightly won another Oscar for Best Original Score. He really just delivered some of the greatest scores in cinema history. Now, if there was one thing about this film that I would criticize, it's the theatrical cut of Return of the King cuts out Saruman's demise, which I remember when we got the DVD of it and we were watching, I said to Chris, my brother, I said, "What happened to Saruman?" And he just looked at me and says, "I don't know." Because Saruman just disappeared at the end of The Two Towers, and they say in a line of dialogue that he's no longer dangerous, just keep him locked away in Isengard. He's still powerful, guys. He lost his army, but he's still powerful. And we lost some great exchanges between Christopher Lee and Ian McKellen again. I mean, these are two masters of their craft clashing together with their dialogue, which is so tricky to do, but they just make it dance. And you just have Brad Dourif as Graham and Wormtongue sneaking up in the back and stabbing Saruman in the back, and he falls and impales. I was baffled that they left this out. When I finally saw this scene, I said, why isn't this in the movie? What was the logic behind this? And from what I understand, it was to cut down on the runtime, as a lot of the other films had to do in order to guarantee multiple showings a day in the multiplexes because of their length, which I see. I definitely see wanting to deliver the epic length, but also not, as Billy Wilder and I.A.L. Diamond would say, gild the lily. However, this is a case where the theatrical cuts are good. They're eminently watchable. But the extended cuts are where it's at. Those are the ones that fans go gaga over because they include several deleted scenes that helps flesh out some character things a little bit better. moments of comedy, moments of drama, moments of atmosphere, and restoring Saruman's death. So I'm going to say, when it comes to The Lord of the Rings, I would suggest the extended editions. You can find them on a lot of streaming platforms. You can buy hard copies. Buy hard copies. I was just listening to Christopher Nolan. Buy hard copies, because that's where all the good stuff's at. But the extended editions, particularly this movie, is the one you want. And so as we continue, after all the glamour and all the build-up and all the box office and all the Academy Awards, these movies are still relevant. I've seen this over the years, that when more and more people are introduced to the world of Tolkien and introduced to these characters, 9 times out of 10, they fall in love with these characters and they fall in love with the world, to the point where, very much like me, when this movie ends and we see the credits saying the end, we say, oh, come on, can't there be a little more? Can't we have more adventures with these characters? Can we stay in the Shire for a little bit? Can we explore Minas Tirith? And not in a way that's obsessive, but one that you know that the filmmakers absolutely delivered on their promise when they create a world that you really want to stay in, to go back and watch these films again right after you finish them. That's just a magical thing. And, you know, online, watching new people react, some of my favorite videos on YouTube, bar none, is the channel Popcorn in Bed, and Cassie and her sister Carly watching them for the first time, and Cassie getting completely into it just as we did, and showing it to her sister, and she's going through the same thing, and she's explaining it like a true fan. Absolutely magical. I love that. And I love seeing that in real life, passing these films down to children, just as the previous generation passed down the books to their youngsters. And I think that did help the books get attention. And it also has led to debate of whether or not changing up the quote-unquote sacred texts, as people have referred to The Lord of the Rings before, was a good idea. And I still feel that it is, because to film Tolkien as it was would have been insanely difficult. They'd probably still be shooting. And so I feel that The Return of the King really put the bow on that feeling of, the world is restored, Sauron is destroyed, the ring was cast back into the fire, which also leads me to another point that I think often gets missed when I talk to people about this, is that Frodo finally gets to Mount Doom and they discover Smeagol is back on their tail. And Frodo gets to the precipice and he's about to drop it, and he doesn't.
The ring is mine.
When I first saw that, I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. I just thought, this can't be happening. Not after all that we've just gone through. But it led to a brilliant change from the books, where Smeagol fully becomes Gollum at this point, reverts back to Gollum. And he, in the book, dances around with joy at being reunited with his precious once again, and kind of stumbles, falls, slips, whoops, into the fiery chasm from whence the ring came. It was an interesting twist on Tolkien's view of fate, for sure. But I think that the idea of Frodo trying to get the ring back, that he's so consumed and he's fallen down finally. He goes after Gollum and tries to take the ring, and they both fall over the edge. And it's revealed that Frodo is hanging on the edge. That's a really good change, and it kind of subverts expectations a little bit for Tolkien scholars, but it also gives that audience that moment of, is Frodo going to come back from this, and is Frodo going to destroy the ring? Has he come to his senses, or is he completely consumed? Suspense. I like that. And of course, that's just, again, Tolkien was a very smart writer. He understood story, and he understood beats to where he knew when to change certain things. And I like the idea that Frodo fails in his mission after all of that. And it's the will of another character and through fate that ultimately destroys the ring. But I like that Jackson wanted Frodo to be a little more active and twisted it in such a way that was very interesting.
The Return of the King serves as the culminating masterpiece of Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings trilogy. It stands as a testament to Tolkien's unparalleled storytelling prowess and his ability to interweave themes of heroism, friendship, sacrifice, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. At its core, this book navigates multiple storylines that then converge in a monumental climax. The Return of the King witnesses the final showdown between the forces of darkness, led by Sauron, and the fractured yet determined alliance of free peoples striving to save Middle-earth. Tolkien's narrative mastery lies in his adeptness at character development, because each member of the Fellowship faces personal challenges, growth, and moments of valor throughout the book. Frodo's internal struggle against the ring's corrupting influence, Samwise's unwavering loyalty, Aragorn's journey to reclaim his destiny as king, and the bravery of many others form the emotional backbone of this story. Moreover, the novel is a testament to Tolkien's skill in world building. The intricate details of Middle-earth, its diverse cultures, languages, and histories really do enrich the narrative and immerse readers in a fully realized realm that feels vivid and tangible. Throughout The Return of the King, Tolkien's prose maintains a captivating and evocative quality. His descriptive ability brings landscapes and battles to life while also delving into the deeper emotional problems and moral dilemmas faced by the characters. Themes of hope, resilience, sacrifice, and the power of collaboration resonate profoundly, thereby offering readers not just an enthralling adventure, but also timeless lessons about the human condition and the enduring struggle between light and dark. In essence, The Return of the King stands as a literary magnum opus, a tale that transcends the boundaries of fantasy and leaving an indelible mark on literature by captivating generations of readers with its depth, richness, and timeless storytelling.
In terms of filmic, there's one criticism that's plagued this movie for decades, and that is that it runs on too long and there are too many endings, multiple endings. I'm going to be honest with y'all. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't care in the slightest about the multiple endings. I never let that bother me. It still doesn't. Because so many loose ends have to be tied up. So many characters have to be shown getting either the ending they got in the book or a little hint of it. Like Aragorn reuniting with Arwen. You see Faramir and Eowyn together as they wound up together in the book. There are several deleted scenes that show what happened to some of the other characters, and I wish that there was a super long version of this where we got to see these properly colored and mixed and cut into the movie as they should be. But again, that's probably going to be like a 5 or 6 hour movie, which I don't mind because I don't particularly mind length if it's an interesting story or if the characters are interesting. And the endings, I think, were perfect because it's like when the film fades to white or fades to black or transitions into the map of Middle-earth, it's a bookend to those characters. Just like, okay, we're going to leave them behind. We know that they're okay. Let's follow them back to the Shire. And another thing that was changed was there's no scouring of the Shire. It's implied when Frodo looks into Galadriel's mirror and sees shots inspired by the scouring of the Shire that actually did happen in The Return of the King. But I like the idea that it's a little more of a hopeful ending than Tolkien intended. And I think, again, Tolkien saw the horrors of war and that you never really come home. Home is never the same. And I think he tried to impart that through the scouring of the Shire. But I think, like I said, that scene in the pub where the four are together, it does that for you. That the Shire's the same, but it's different for the main characters. And they're trying to get back into it. And poor Frodo went through all this physical pain and mental torture, and he still has the wound from the battle with the ring wraiths on Weathertop. And he sails into the Grey Havens with Gandalf and Elrond and Galadriel and Bilbo. in a really sad scene, but also bittersweet because you understand why he's leaving. He has to go heal. He feels that he saved the Shire, but not for him. He saved it for everybody else, which shows how selfless he really is. And so I like the fact that they come back to this beautiful Shire, but they're changed. That what they fought for meant something, I think. In the book, it was a shock that what you're fighting for is really nothing because war is hell. But sometimes a little change like that can make a bigger difference than an even more powerful ending from the original text.
Leads us ultimately into Return of the King, which completes the trilogy in the most grandest of ways. It's hard to put into words just how well done the final film was of bringing together all of these elements and really doing it in a grander scale than we had seen yet, which is impressive considering how epic and large these films are and how deep they are as well. And it goes even further than that. It's incredible. And it ties everything together and brings everything in through kind of like this like great experience and the culmination of essentially three journeys of Frodo's journey, Aragorn's journey, and Gandalf's journey. And through the completion of all three of those, we had this culmination of this great moment of victory, and then just the sheer joy and happiness that comes out of the culmination of that. And, that hope is finally rewarded through all of those hardships and times, and then all of the great sort of rewards that come from it. And so I really do think that Lord of the Rings, as the books themselves, they were so grand and epic, and they were written from Tolkien's kind of perspective of his life and coming out of the World War and really trying to understand, how do I do justice to this? How do I do this right and kind of write a story that still remains true to the human spirit and through all the pain and struggles, but doesn't forget the most important piece of it, which is hope. And that, through all of the difficult times, and there will be many that will be stacked upon you, it is ultimately hope that will be through it, and the friends and the colleagues and family that will take you through that as well and help carry your weight when sometimes it's too much to bear alone, and greater faith along with that. And so the creation of these films for Peter Jackson, the ability to craft a world that is believable, the great use of special effects and also of realistic effects, as we've talked about before on the podcast, that make this just feel so much more realistic, and they stand up so well even by today's standards. The great use of action and battle setups that really create these masterful epics that really use real world older strategies and technologies, but reintegrated them here into this. I remember in high school, I had a professor, we were in a world history class for some society years ago, that actually Peter Jackson and the crew used some of the elements from this moment in history in the second movie, and like actually recreated like the strategies they would use of ladders and burrowing and bombs to blow up massive walls. And it was incredible that this movie was being used to teach world history, because in a sense, the movie was using world history. So kind of like a fun little tie in there. And I think with that, it really is incredible to see that this, in a sense, is a perfect trilogy. Looking back on the movie, it's almost impossible to really nitpick anything and find details that are wrong in it. And again, it has that resonating factor, and it holds up so well, even to this day. The point where you argue that it's one of those kind of movies or trilogies that should never be recreated, because how would you ever get lightning in a bottle like that twice? And why would you ever try and get that twice? And so, in my opinion, it really is perfect, and it transcends cinema, and it grasps onto us at that human and heart level and takes us on that journey, and really is so powerful because of it. And it really is just incredible to see, like, even over time, how much these movies really still do mean to people, myself included.
And so with that being said, The Return of the King is definitely the crowd pleaser of the bunch. It really leaves you on the highest of highs and you see the lowest of lows emotionally, not in terms of filmmaking quality, as some like to say. I just think that this is a wonderful, truly great movie. And it really rode into history as a game changer for cinema. Franchises were something that studios wanted again. I mean, again, we had, at the same time, we had Harry Potter, we had Star Wars. We were starting to get those franchises, and unfortunately, just as we saw in the 1980s, there was a boom of fantasy films, which some were good. Like, I liked Disney's adaptation of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by Tolkien's best friend, C.S. Lewis. That's a wonderful series. And I liked the films okay. But there were others like Aragon and Artemis Fowl that never quite connected like Lord of the Rings, but they were certainly chasing that aesthetic and that audience. So it was a short-lived boom, again, to be sure, but again, there was lack of care put into adapting the text. There was lack of care in executing the vision according to what people liked about those stories. And The Lord of the Rings still rings true. Yes, I know I just said that. I didn't mean to. But it still rings true for audiences who grew up with these movies, who saw them when they originally came out, and new people who will discover these in the future. I think they'll find masterpieces of great action, wonderful character, wonderful sets, and just a brilliant series of films. And The Return of the King perfectly closed it out. With that, I'll be closing out too. This was fun, and thank you guys for joining me on this wonderful journey back into the world of Tolkien. I'm Jim Crowley, and thank you so much to my guests, and have a good night.
Lay down your sweet and weary head. Night is falling. You've come to journey's end. Sleep now. Dream of the ones who came before. They are calling from across the distant shore. Why do you weep? What are these tears upon your face? Soon you will see. All of your fears will pass away, safe in my arms. You're only sleeping. What can you see?